Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Monday everybody. I hope you all had a restful weekend. Yesterday, Sunday, Beijing kicked off the Communist Party's 20th National Congress, the most important political event in China for at least half a decade, which may be looked back on in years to come as an historical moment as power formally further concentrates in the hands of Xi Jinping. We will be following the week-long party congress this week, examining key developments and statements each day as they are made. Yesterday, Sunday, day 1, was the opening ceremony. General Secretary Xi Jinping gave an almost 2-hour speech in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, calling on the party's 97 million members to prepare for a, quote, critical time, end quote, in China's history, and examining the party's, quote, mission is glorious beyond compare, end quote. The next 5 years will be the so-called critical period for achieving the nation's major long-term goals, objectives that can be broken down into 2 major phases. First, the country will basically realize socialist modernization, to use the language of the leadership, by 2035, and then grow into a nation that is, quote, prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful, end quote, by 2049. When the People's Republic of China turns 100 years old. The speech delivered by Xi was an abridged version of his work report, a departure from tradition, as the party chief usually reads out the entire document. This was perhaps out of concern for the retired elderly party leaders, including Song Ping at 105 years old, who joined him on the stage. Let's examine the main themes of the General Secretary's speech. On the economic front, Xi said that China will pursue high-quality development and accelerate the construction of a modernized economy, while raising total factor production and making industrial and supply chains more resilient and secure, thereby effectively upgrading the appropriately expanding economic output. Also, and tellingly, Xi stressed the critical role of state-run enterprises in his vision for the Chinese economy. Next, in his remarks, Xi praised his own zero-COVID policy, expressing that it, quote, protected the people's health and safety to the greatest extent possible, end quote. As we anticipated after last week's media blitz of zero-COVID apologist articles, the General Secretary gave no indication in his remarks that it was time for China to move away from the policy or loosen controls. Taiwan, unsurprisingly, was raised in the remarks, with Xi saying that the party will continue to strive for peaceful reunification, but that, quote, we will never promise to renounce the use of force, and we reserve the option of taking all measures necessary, end quote. Shortly after Xi's comments, Taiwan's presidential office responded by expressing that the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name, is, quote, already sovereign, end quote, and will not back down. Quote, Taiwan's position is firm. No backing down on national sovereignty, no compromise on democracy and freedom, and meeting on the battlefield is absolutely not an option for the 2 sides of the Taiwan Strait. This is the consensus of Taiwan's people, end quote. Last Monday, during her National Day speech, Tsai Ing-wen said war between Taiwan and the mainland was not an option and pledged to keep boosting Taiwan's defenses, a process we have seen accelerate in recent months, especially as the US steps up aid to the island as well. Now, returning to Xi Jinping's speech on Hong Kong, the General Secretary praised the implementation of the controversial and so-called national security law in 2020, which, he said, quote, marked a major turning point from chaos to governance, end quote. On the environmental front, China will also, quote, largely eliminate pollution, end quote, and achieve carbon neutrality. On the military, she expressed that the People's Liberation Army will continue to pursue the goal of becoming a world-class force by 2027, stressing modernization in military theory, organization, personnel, and weaponry. He also reminded the world that the PLA is the party's military first, as is the nation's domestic paramilitary. Quote, we will strengthen party building across the board in the People's Armed Forces to ensure that they are always obeying the party's command, end quote. Now, in the following days, we will continue to follow the Congress. We expect amendments to the party constitution and announcements of the new Central Committee, the new 7-person Politburo Standing Committee, the nature of Xi's third term, and critically, whether there are signals of a possible successor to Xi or not. Next up, the housing crisis. Hey guys, if you like what I'm trying to do here with China Update and you'd like to help me keep it sustainable, continue making episodes for you guys every day, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This is the best way you can help me continue producing China Update. If you like this episode in particular, don't forget to hit that like button. And as always, thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. Okay, we have a couple of important housing developments to move through. The first is in the growth of a concerning phenomenon which we first observed a few weeks ago in downtown Suzhou. That is, of local governments and state-owned enterprises buying unsold apartments in order to prop up local real estate markets. We note that revenue from these purchases is in part coming from land use sales too, which, as we have seen, is also being propped up by local government financing vehicles. Over the weekend, Chinese financial media outlet Caixin writes that a district natural resources and planning bureau in Wuhan, capital of Hubei province, brought 200 residential units from a local developer earlier this year. The purchase was seen as a bailout for a local cash-strapped builder. And it's not just Wuhan and Suzhou seeing this too. Since September, local authorities in provinces including Jilin, Gansu and Guizhou have tried to intervene in this way. In Zhengzhou, the epicenter of the mortgage boycotts, its housing bureau and state-owned Zhengzhou Real Estate Group Co. acquired 20,000 apartments in August. The city government has now instructed the two to buy a total of 100,000 units by the end of the year in order to, quote, ease developers' difficulties of selling completed or nearly completed housing projects, end quote. Caixin went on to explain, quote, the moves are among the latest policies and measures aimed at stimulating the languishing property market, which has suffered a collapse in consumer and business confidence, causing inventories to pile up, end quote. Analysts point out, however, that this isn't without precedent. Local governments have intervened in the market by buying property in the past. In fact, inventories were purchased during the last housing downturn in 2014, with governments eventually turning many of these into public housing. However, it's increasingly the consensus that this housing crisis is much deeper, more widespread, and far more dangerous than the housing downturn that we saw in 2014. Consumer confidence has been battered, developers are suffering painful liquidity constraints, the industry is more over-leveraged, and inventories are much bigger. According to recent data from China Real Estate Information Corp, housing inventories in 100 major cities last month rose 3% year-on-year to almost 600 million square meters, and with those in third and fourth tier cities increasing at a faster pace at 5%. In the same report, China Real Estate Information Corp found that sales of new properties for the top 100 developers in China slumped 45.4% year-on-year. Of course, this isn't very surprising and is more or less in line with the collapse that we've seen in sales throughout 2022. And next up for the housing sector, and finally, for today's episode, China's central bank in its latest survey has found that China's home prices are likely to keep dropping as investors lose confidence in the economy. In its quarterly consumer survey released on Sunday, the People's Bank of China, China's central bank, says that just 14.8% of respondents believe home prices could rise in the fourth quarter of this year. The remaining 85.2% are betting that prices will continue to drop. This means the vast majority of potential home buyers think that prices are going to go down. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.